I can't believe how many like articles and things I've read. It's like, oh, you need all the social medias. You need Facebook, you need TikTok, you need Twitter, you need Instagram, and all this stuff. And in my experience, I've found that to be a really, really bad strategy. Find one with a strong audience and stick to just that.
This Audience Summit is brought to you in partnership with Podcast Notes, the best ideas from the world's best podcasts in minutes.
Guy, welcome to the Grow Your Podcast Audience Summit, brought to you by the Lewis and Kyle Show. We're excited to have you on as a contributor. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Real quick, for those who aren't familiar with yourself and or your show, can you introduce yourself, the podcast, what and why, and the mission?
Yeah, so I host Bitcoin Audible and actually Shitcoin Insider, which is actually a newer show, but it's basically teaching people how to navigate, understand what on earth Bitcoin is, and what's going on in the space, trying to make all the best writing available to people so that they can like listen to it, and then talking with all the major people in the space and like really just breaking down all the main ideas. It's a huge variety of things. It's just a daily show hitting Bitcoin from every possible perspective it can be hit.
So the first question for you and the first question for everybody that's participating in our audience summit is, what has been the most effective marketing channel for growing your audience, and how have you used it?
It's definitely Twitter. Twitter is a great place to reach an audience, and social media in general, like you kind of have to pick which one I think fits the niche that you're in. Like Twitter has a really big and really vocal Bitcoin community. Like I don't think I'd be able to do the same thing on Facebook or Instagram, but in how to use it, you'll see, like, I can't believe how many like articles and things I've read. It's like, oh, you need all the social medias. You need Facebook, you need TikTok, you need Twitter, you need Instagram, and all this stuff. And in my experience, I've found that to be a really, really bad strategy. Find one with a strong audience and stick to just that. Like build an audience on one platform, because the margin of return is awful for every new social media that you add, whereas it adds a ton of work. Like you're going to get burnt out in a month if you're trying to keep up with 8 social medias. Dedicate to one and build a really strong audience. And after that workflow is just streamlined and robotic and everything is just kind of in the bag, then move to the next one if you feel like you need to. Like that's after 2 years, I'm finally moving to YouTube. So yeah, Twitter is a huge resource, and focus, I think, is a huge part of it.
I absolutely love that advice, and the reason that I like it so much is because it flies in the face of what Lewis and I have been doing, and most of the participants in this audience summit have echoed a similar message. So you're not alone in your thinking, but we might be. So we need to get on the one bridge building, as we call it. So the second question for you is, what are some underrated tactics that you've used to attract listeners to your show? So maybe some other things besides Twitter that have just been sort of small experiments that you've seen good ROI on.
Interesting. So probably like I don't have much like specifics in that regard, because I've focused so hard. Like, in fact, marketing is something that I haven't spent a lot of dedicated time to, like attracting listeners, because I've had such a greater return on investment by just pushing out the next piece of content and explaining the next thing or answering the next question. Like every time somebody landed a question somewhere about Bitcoin, I'd be like, I could turn this into an episode. I think there's a really great piece on this idea. And then, having daily content has kept people coming back. However, I would say that something I've done loosely and more recently and have had really surprising success with, and that I'm going to push a lot harder on, is like GIFs and little memes. Is put yourself out there as an authority in the space by being like equate your show or whatever it is that you're doing with the topic that you're dealing with. So if somebody searches that topic or searches something in Giphy around that topic that you want them to pay attention to, make a GIF with your show and your logo on it and some funny little clip, and make that on the front page of when they search for that tag.
No, that's really interesting. I've never heard or thought about that. And I think that there are a lot of potential opportunities for you in that space with Bitcoin, from podal to parabolic to
Oh yeah.
a
Yeah, there's
million
a
different
big,
vernacular specific words that you could sort of take over.
yeah.
Great. Well, so our third question for you is, how have you converted your listeners into fans? So, you attract this audience from Twitter of people that are very interested in crypto. How do you keep those people coming back to you to be their source of information?
Probably first answer questions. Be there like everybody is, like I said, confused. It feels incredibly overwhelming and so many people need direction and assistance, and be there to help. That's one that I've really, even people who don't like strictly follow the show will come back and see me as like a resource to get help on something or to get trusted advice. And also just like, if you're doing a podcast, be genuine. People can tell when you're full of shit. Like they just can. And and also be like self-reflexive. You're gonna sound arrogant, or you're gonna say something that you kind of know in the back of your mind is like, okay, like that's a tall order and probably just something that I'm pulling out of my butt. And call that out. Call yourself out on stuff. Like, be honest with yourself and do that on the show, and people, I think, will respect your opinion more, and know that you're likely telling them the truth when they come for advice or they want your opinion on something.
Yeah. I think that sounds really easy, but it's harder than you'd think to be authentic, trying to interview somebody and maybe you got something going on in your own world, and you got to kind of put a smile on. But you're right, though. You have to allow your own personality to show through in a way that isn't masked or fake, because people can just smell that out.
Yeah.
So our fourth question is, if you could start your show over again, what would you do differently to grow it more effectively?
I would, particularly like in like how I was mentioning GIFs and like memes and stuff, is like some of that is like the reason it's taken me so long, I think, to get there is, to honest to God, a lack of confidence. Is that, be confident early on. Like if it's something that you're starting a show about because it's something that, you really care about or that you're really knowledgeable about, don't be afraid to say or position yourself as someone really knowledgeable about it. Like I really had imposter syndrome for a really long time when the show started getting success, and I would kind of tiptoe around it and always assume that the other guy was smarter or knew something that I didn't know, which is actually like not a bad tactic to take, particularly in a conversation. You always want them to be talking, that if you're having an interview with somebody, but don't discount yourself. Be okay with sharing your opinion. And if you know something and you think something, describe and explain why. And in doing so, kind of like the whole idea of like the GIFs and the memes or whatever is kind of a form of, don't be afraid to be like, yeah, Bitcoin Audible is the place to learn about Bitcoin. Like I've answered all the questions. Like I've spent hours and hours and hours. Like I get off the show and I go sit down and I read about Bitcoin, or I, dig into some 13-page technical breakdown of the Lightning Network, and just nobody else has the time to do that crap. So like I have to be confident enough to know that like I'm sitting down and I'm explaining something that nobody else has the time to do. And 99.9% of people haven't and won't do it. So I'm their resource. I need to do that and be okay with telling them that. And I think that's a huge thing that's made a big difference later on, that I really wish I had just gotten over the hump earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that honesty, and that's you being authentic. So the last question that we have for you is, if you had a $1,000 marketing budget for your show, we don't know if you spend a lot of money on ads or how you promote it that way, but let's just say you get $1,000 free dollars courtesy of Lewis and Kyle. Where are you putting the money right now to grow your show?
Probably on Fiverr. Probably on Fiverr. I'd probably be hiring things to make custom banners and imagery. I would probably do some Twitter promotion, because it's very, very little dollar cost for, getting in front of 50 more people that might not know about my show. it would be in very small costs that I think would go the extra mile. And it would also be hiring out people for little animated videos and GIFs and stuff like that. I'd try to get an explosion of variety in a couple of things rather than do a couple of really big things that might cost me $500 or something like that.
Fantastic. Well, Guy, thank you very much for coming on and participating in our audience summit. We are very excited to have you. We're both really interested in crypto and blockchain right now, and we're kind of starting that journey as we alluded to earlier on. But if people want to find you, they liked your answers, they want to learn a little bit more about Bitcoin, where should we send our audience?
Yeah, I'm Guy Swann. My tag on Twitter is @the_cryptoconomy. You can find me on Guy Swann at YouTube, which I'm really starting to go hard on the YouTube presence now. And then at either of my podcasts, @Bitcoin Audible or @Shitcoin Insider, those tags on Twitter as well. Actually, the easiest way to get to all of that actually is guyswann.com. I just recently started that up, and that's been another great tool is one location where you can get to everything. So been happy with that.
Well, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to our channel right here on YouTube. And if you feel like you learned something, share this episode on social media to help us grow our audience as well.